Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton with Good Virtual Reality here, and thanks for giving us your time. Today, I'm joined by Frooxius from Virtual Reality. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us where you're tuned in from today?
Hello. First, thank you so much for inviting me to this podcast. My name is Tomáš Mariančík, but I usually go by Frooxius. I've been working on virtual reality. It's been a while, since 2013, so that's over 10 years. Working on a number of different projects. One of my early ones that got kind of popular was called Sightline, and Sightline the Chair. I work on Neos, which then exploded, and I'm working on a project called Resonite. That's pretty much me. I'm also coming to you from Resonite itself. I'm currently in Czech Republic, but I'm also coming to you from the virtual space.
Are you a furry, and what is a furry?
Yes. I mean, that can be a very complicated question. Depending on who you answer, furry can mean a lot of different things to different people. Generally, it covers people who really like anthropomorphic characters, for example, like this one. As far as the basis of it, they enjoy the art, they enjoy embodying those characters, identifying with them. But what it means specifically, it's gonna depend on each person.
Tell me what your hardware setup is to present yourself as this character right now.
I'm using the Wi-Fi headset, which has eye tracking, so I can be looking around, and also using the Project Babble tracker with Babylonia, which is tracking my mouth, so I can be making expressions. I can do expressions like this, gestures. I'm using the index controllers, so I have finger motion. I would normally put on full body with Vive trackers. I don't have those on right now. I'm also using the mod mic microphone.
What was your first VR experience?
I was one of the original packers for the Oculus DK1. I wonder how many people remember the old Tuscany demo. It was one of the amps that was bundled with the headset because there was almost nothing. And I remember I put it on, and it would be oh my god, these plants look so real and stuff like that. And then I actually spent a lot of time in Team Fortress, which was a proper full game that actually had official support from Valve.
If you had to pick a single moment of presence in a headset as your favorite, what would it be?
That is difficult. The first one that comes to my mind is actually when I first started using face tracker. It was the Vive facial tracker. It was kind of one of the prototypes. And I was in VR. I was in my avatar. And I remember one of my friends in VR, they said something, and they said they like to see me smile. And what's cool about it is I didn't realize I was smiling. They can see my expression, even though they're on the other side of the planet, and they can see subtle human emotion, through this avatar. And to me, it was very powerful.
Were you as a character or similar to the character you are now when you sort of did that expression?
Yes.
So you were seen. You felt seen?
Yes, seeing, and also just seeing something I didn't even realize I was doing. It was a subtle facial expression. And to me, that was this technology is going to reach the point where it can be transferred through the virtual world.
You said Neos blew up. I wonder if you can tell the story of what happened there from your perspective.
So Neos, I've been kind of cooperating with this person, and he wanted to put crypto and NFT into the universe. And for a while, I've seen some benefit to that. There are a lot of companies that were trying to make quick buck on it, and they were trying to get rich very quick while not really doing much of anything, which is hyping projects that were mostly vaporware. And I felt we're building something real, something really powerful, and maybe we can be one of the few companies where there's a proper utility and there's something real behind it. But then kind of what happened, I can't get too much into detail, but we've discovered some very shady things that raised a lot of concerns. We brought those up, which only led to the situation to escalate, and essentially got to the point where we need to distance ourselves from this. There's no way to fix this, and we don't want to be associated with some of the things he was kind of doing behind the scenes. We ended up separating. That kind of became pretty much blew up. It was a very difficult time, but we managed to get through it, and we kind of went our separate ways.
Would you say that the community is larger than it was at Neos at this point, or are you still sort of building towards that?
I think it's a bit larger. It's not actually that much bigger, I feel. It is definitely different. There's been definitely some people who joined, some people who left. There's also groups that joined and started using Resonite. So in some sense, there's more, but also there's different sort of communities, different people. And we would definitely want it to grow a lot more, but that is sort of a gradual process.
You seem to have been focused pretty exclusively on PC VR. What does PC VR mean to you?
To me, I would say it means freedom. You've got a lot more compute power. So you can do things that you're not able to do on standalone. It means you can use lots of different peripheries, lots of hardware. You can integrate it with a lot of different pieces of software. There's a lot more that you can do on PCVR that you cannot do on standalone. There's no not to say that standalone doesn't have its own strengths, and it's something we eventually want to support, but that path is like long and kind of complicated.
Did you ever think about abandoning PCVR and doing something else?
Definitely not abandoning. We would definitely want to expand to other areas like standalone, but not at the cost of PCVR.
Explain Resonite for someone who might not be in VR right now or might have never touched Neos or maybe isn't even a VRChat user. What is Resonite?
Resonite, it's essentially a collaborative social VR sandbox platform. You have like your avatars, you can join worlds, you can be there like with multiple people. But also, big part that's unique to Resonite is we have like a lot of power over the world you exist in. This world that I'm in, this was largely built by our team completely within VR. So like the models themselves, they like made in Blender, but like they would like import them in, they would set up materials, they would pose everything. And the goal of Resonite is to give people as much control over the world they're in as possible. Like people shape the universe, the virtual universe they inhabit. It's almost like if took like VRChat and like the Unity editor and kind of smooshed them like together into like one thing. So that can be a good analogy.
What did it feel like to leave Neos initially?
It was hard. One of the hardest things I've ever did. There were like many times I kind of wanted to leave it because of like some other things kind of happening. The kind of relationship was very abusive. Over the years, I kept staying because I was like really, really afraid of losing my work. And that's something that I was like repeatedly threatened by. It's like, if I leave, I'll lose everything. Until it like got to the point like I couldn't afford a lawyer. But fortunately, thanks to the community and thanks to the people that built around Resonite, they got me in touch with one who was willing to help. And they would then tell me no, that's like nonsense, you cannot do that, that's nonsense, you cannot do that. And I was finally like able to push back. Even with that, there was like long period of sort of uncertainty. I would like wake up like every day and I would just feel like I would feel like I'm gonna vomit my insides out. Like it was such an awful feeling. And I would go to sleep and I would dream about it and then wake up and there was several months of that. Like it was very, very rough. And it took like a lot of time to just sort of fade and for things to kind of start becoming okay again.
Was it a relief in any way to have a fresh start in Resonite?
Yes. It was probably like one of the most impactful like moments. Just being able to like exist without like a lot of the constant like anxiety and fear and just kind of focus and be like, what I'm building is my own and like nobody can like take it from me. Like it was like hugely impactful like on my kind of like just mental health in general.
Do you want to show me around your space a little bit since we have that ability?
Oh, of course. So this is the Resonite Cloud Home. This is essentially the place everybody kind of gets. And there's a bunch of like cool things for people to play with. So for example, like here there's a bunch of like games. We did like the classical, we've got like the bow and it can like enable a bunch of targets. We could like shoot like, you see this like in every, my aim's horrible. And you can, see that, you see this thing in like a lot of cloud homes, so homes like for the VR applications. So we kind of had to do it as well. I can also show you there's a bunch of kind of tools. So like, for example, we have like brush systems. There we go. So it can be like, hello. There we go. Hello. So you can draw. But one of the cool things is there's a bunch of kind of tools that you can, find like on this desk. And there's like a lot of editing tools. And the most powerful one is probably this one. This is the developer tool. And this lets me, once I equip it, you can essentially edit anything. So I can, for example, like select this thing and now there's like, gizmo and I can like move this around. I can just do pretty much kind of whatever. Or I can select this thing and I want to scale it. It's I can like open an inspector and there's like all the properties of the object. So for example, here there's like a grabbable. I can enable this and now like I can grab this whole thing. I disable it and it's no longer grabbable. And there's all those sort of properties. For example, here's the mesh and all the like materials. Those are also like, something you can change. Pretty much like everything you see is fully expressed and accessible through like this inspector interface. So I can, for example, grab a material. Let's see. I'm gonna grab something. I'm gonna grab like a sand material and I'm gonna plop it in there. And now this chair is lava. So you can like instantly like edit anything, in the world.
Why did you pick this particular way of doing things?
So like the part is like very unique to Resonite is like, that you can edit everything inside of virtual reality. Like you don't need to use like the external tool to be able to do that. And the main reason for that is the immediacy. Every change, you see the impact of it inside of VR instantly. And it pretty much like, takes your, iteration kind of loop. Like when you make some changes to editor, you push it on, you put it on the headset, and essentially shortens to 0. And that can be like incredibly powerful, and especially even more powerful when it's collaborative, where you can like, do it with multiple people, because it tends to create like this effect I like to call like creative resonance, where somebody will come up with an idea and we like to joke that like it's dangerous to come up with ideas in Resonite because in 5 minutes later somebody's working on it, somebody's like building it. But you also see people like somebody will make a change and somebody will see that and they'll be like make some changes based on that or build around it, and you just see this sort of bursting of creativity that sort of like happens around it, and that to me like is very, very powerful.
What do you think is the ultimate potential of virtual reality?
Virtual reality is like about putting people into like your imagination and visiting imagination of other people. There can be like multiple things. Like imagination, it can be like, fantasy and sci-fi worlds and telling stories. But also imagination is a lot about, it's not just like fictional stuff, but it's also about, learning and science. Because even for like, education stuff, it helps so much to be able to, visualize and imagine something, how things work. One of my kind of favorite examples is how Albert Einstein came up like with a theory of relativity. He described that he was like, imagining chasing a photon, like a wave. And he was thinking, what would happen? And through the imagination, he came up like, with this like groundbreaking physical theory. There's like other physicists like Richard Feynman, and he talked a lot about like how imagination is like key to understanding the world. So to me, VR is a medium that lets you take the imagination like out of your head and make it into a world that you can share with others and where it can mingle with imagination of other people.
People that have never experienced VR before, what do they need to understand about virtual reality? And the people that live inside of it, what do they need to understand about the physical world?
VR can be like overwhelming, especially like, for new people. There's like a lot of things kind of happening. So taking things slow, when exploring the virtual worlds and we're learning how it works, that's oftentimes like a good idea, so somebody else doesn't get overwhelmed. And the other part is like, the social aspect is actually, I feel like, very important because, when you navigate these virtual worlds, other people can help you. Other people can, help show how things work. They can help, like, set up things that, you can learn from them. And there's like, very, very powerful mechanism because like, you kind of learn things through the social layer. People spend I spend a lot of time in virtual reality, and that's kind of how I meet people, and it sort of flows into that because some people end up sort of isolating themselves even in the virtual world, they're just kind of working on something. But I feel like these social interactions are very important because what I found myself is a lot of the sort of friendships you make through the virtual world, they often end up translating to the real world. Like a lot of people in our community I end up meeting, and we actually now do kind of regular meetups and visits. And that is something that to me is also kind of powerful. It's it shows that even though this space is virtual, the relationships you build with people, those can be real. And it's also good, to go and meet those people outside of VR. If you're able to, not everyone's able to, but trying to push things so you can meet people, it can be very rewarding.
How many worlds or how many people use Resonite? Can you give numbers there?
We typically have about 200 to 300 concurrent users roughly every day. It can vary. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. I think I don't remember the exact number. It's something over 1,000 unique users each day.
Do you think there's a day when we reach at least 1 billion people in VR headsets?
1 billion? I hope so. I don't know if we will, or when we will. I certainly hope so. I don't know enough to be able to tell if we will or not.
Do you feel competitive with VRChat?
In some ways, yes. There's a tricky thing because, for how we build Resonite, we specifically set it as a goal not to be a copy of VRChat. We want to build, something that's our own, something that, makes sense to us. And there's a lot of stuff that is similar, but to us, that's more it's convergent design, where it's like, okay, like we're doing these things similar because they make sense. But also we're doing like, some other things kind of different. Because of that, there's like a good overlap. And there's definitely things that like, the VRChat has that we don't have, that like, a lot of people are missing. But there's also like one very difficult thing, which is like when people try to, come to Resonite from VRChat, the most common reason like people don't stay is because they essentially say, all my friends are on VRChat. There's like a friction to like friends groups, and that can be kind of like, tricky for the growth. We do some things, especially like, the collaborative building is, something you don't get like over there. And that appeals to people. We definitely do have like some overlap. I think like in terms of like, some features, like, we're kind of competitive, but there's also kind of ones where we're not, at least not yet. But also we do have, other things. And I think like because it is because like we have those other things that we kind of still keep going, that our community, even though not huge, is enough to kind of keep us surviving. And keep us sort of, alive.
There was sort of an attempt to do this in Horizon Worlds, and it got very quickly abandoned for corporate needs. Are you worried about repeating their mistakes? Or are you going to keep that sort of collaborative, building what's in your imagination for as long as you possibly can?
Resonite is kind of built on, certain philosophies. For years, I've been kind of like, stickler for those philosophies. I want us to stay true to like, what the goal of like Resonite is. And sometimes we need to kind of like, weave the path, but keeping our core values like long term is like important. And it's also like one of the reasons like why we try to like stick to being funded mostly through community and through like business projects, rather than like, selling the company or selling like controlling share of the company. I feel that's oftentimes, when those goals end up changing, because it starts kind of being, extremely kind of profit oriented, and that ends up changing the core values of the company. And that's something I don't want to happen to us.
Do you want to take me to a world that you were surprised by being created in Resonite? While you take me there, is there anything else you want people to know about your work and about Resonite?
Okay. Let me think for a second, because there is a lot of like really cool worlds. I guess the question is, would you like a world that's like, very nicely kind of like polished experience?
We can show people who have never seen Resonite before what a pretty world looks like in there.
I'm gonna show you one of the entries from the Metaverse Maker competition. This might take a little bit to load in, so give me a sec. So you should still be able to hear me as it loads. This is called Shadow of Cove. It's one of the entries from Metaverse Maker competition, which is like a annual sort of competition. Let me also swing the camera around.
That was really neat to see it load live with you here. What rig are you driving today?
I'm on my laptop. It is like a pretty beefy laptop. It has like RTX 4080, like a laptop version, and Intel i9.
How much RAM?
64. I got more RAM before the prices went up, fortunately. There we go. So this is like very, very kind of polished world. I guess like it is both like kind of surprising, but also kind of like, no, because like this is built by a team that's like known on Resonate for like building really, really polished worlds, and like it's very like beautiful. And there's always like cool things, like kind of cool interactions that kind of people put into them. Like for example, here you have like, this kind of cauldron, and what's kind of cool is like you can put things in there. So like, there's like these pillows. I can grab the pillow and just like, yank it there, and like, maybe like I'm just gonna put another one. And it will do like different things depending on what they put in there. That's actually the least exciting one. And there's also like there's a whole like kitchen here, and this is like a sort of social world, but there's like a lot of kind of interaction to things. You can cook here. You've got like ingredients, like garlic, you can just also eat it. You can make bread, actually like making the bread. So you can like pull this out and, you put it in here. And there's like whole like recipes that I probably don't want to go through the whole thing, but you can make like meals. You can serve beer, which I really like. This is kind of cool. Like, there's these kind of cool like mugs. You can like take the mug and like pour it. There we go. And what's cool about it is like it also has like interaction. So if I like drink it, I don't know if it shows well, but it's kind of funny on the camera. But
you've got a little bit of foam on your cheeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing I would probably want people to understand kind of about Resonite is that like we're a small team. Like there's definitely, when people come to Resonite, there's definitely gonna be some rough edges around it. But there's like a lot of fun things to do. The platform is very creative, and the community is like hugely friendly and like helpful. So like if people come in and want to check out the Resonite, uh, don't be afraid to ask, the community for help. Like people love helping, people love showing people around, how to do things and showing all the cool things and stuff that's been created on here. And getting kind of comfortable. And also we are largely, like I already mentioned, like largely supported through our community. So if people like the platform and like what we're doing, like it helps us a lot kind of like, when people support us, because we can kind of keep the platform like independent and keep focusing on our kind of core goals.
Is it Patreon? What is the main platform where people can give, or how do people find more information if they've heard about it for the first time through this?
The best thing would be going to the website on resonite.com. There's links on supporting us right there. We also do have Patreon, so that works as well. It should be patreon.com/resonite. We generally prefer like supporting directly through the website, because for the same amount of money, like we get more of it. Patreon takes a much bigger percentage in fees, but either way, like kind of helps. And even just coming into the platform, checking it out, being part of the community, building cool things, that helps us a lot because it helps the community grow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time, Frooxius. We'll see you in the future.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun.